In the past few billion years, Earth has been pummeled by asteroids, crashed into other planets, and frozen over several times. Not to mention being ruled by all kinds of crazy life forms. Sometimes it's a wonder that our blue homeworld has survived it all. But if we want to take a whirlwind tour of our planet's history, we'll have to start way back at the very beginning. Some 4.5 billion years ago, our solar system began to emerge out of a dense cloud of interstellar gas and dust. This cloud collapsed into a swirling disk of matter that got hotter and hotter and hotter until hydrogen fused into helium. And just like that, our sun was born. And baby Earth was on its way too. After the birth of our star, all the matter on the farthest ends of the spinning disk began to clump together. These clumps would be the seedlings for the planets and moons in our solar system. As they accumulated more matter, they grew bigger and more spherical. The clumps in the cooler regions of the solar system were mostly made of ice, liquids, and gases. Closer to the sun, all the rocky material formed the inner planets like Mars and Earth. This young Earth was incredibly active, volcanically speaking. It spewed out gases like hydrogen sulfide, methane, and carbon dioxide. These gases made up the very first atmosphere on our planet. Early Earth was constantly bombarded by large asteroids and comets, and soon Earth experienced an even more violent collision. Theia, a planet the size of Mars, slammed right into our young world. This epic collision threw chunks of matter all around Earth's orbit, and then gravity bound them together into what we know now as the Moon. On this hot, early Earth, there were no oceans. All water existed as gas. But 3.8 billion years ago, our planet cooled enough for water to condensate and become liquid. The very first primitive ocean covered this young Earth and turned it into a water world. H2O is an essential ingredient for creating living things, so with all that water, life appeared on Earth about 3.7 billion years ago. These earliest forms of life were microscopic organisms, but it was nearly a billion years after that that some of these organisms changed the course of the world. Earth didn't stay as a water world very long. Soon, the very first continents emerged from the ancient ocean. Scientists call them cratons. As more and more land rose from the ocean, the very first supercontinent appeared on the planet. Valbara wasn't exactly a supercontinent. It was pretty small. Scientists think it was smaller than the continent of Australia. Around 2.4 billion years ago, cyanobacteria evolved to become our planet's first photosynthesizers. Finally, we had some oxygen producers to make Earth's atmosphere much more hospitable. And the rest is history, folks. Just kidding, we've still got a long way to go. With all this new oxygen, Earth's atmosphere had much lower levels of carbon dioxide. And that made the planet icy cold. Much of our young world froze over as Earth saw its first ice age. Now, as Earth's atmosphere was changing, the continents were moving too. They broke up and reassembled into the next supercontinent, Rodinia. Rodinia was a real supercontinent. It may have been the largest supercontinent to ever cover the planet. And life? Well, life finally became more complex. But then something happened. Rodinia broke apart and a new supercontinent assembled. This one was called Pannotia. Then, between about 540 and 485 million years ago, there was an explosion of new life. This time was called the Cambrian explosion, and the animals that evolved during this period had hard body parts, like shells or spines. The most famous of all were the alien-looking trilobites. Around 440 million years ago, the climate suddenly shifted and the temperature of the ocean changed dramatically. Earth saw its first mass extinction event. This was the Ordovician-Silurian extinction, and a majority of the life that had been spreading around the planet vanished. Many of these life forms laid the foundation for the ecosystems that we have on Earth today. Somewhere between 420 to 350 million years ago, the first trees arose from Earth's soil. And the first animals made their way to land, too. 250 million years ago, the planet was covered by our last vast supercontinent, Pangaea. Sadly, it was also during this period that Earth witnessed the greatest mass extinction event in our history, the Great Dying. Huge amounts of greenhouse gases and accelerated global warming wiped out about 90% of all species on Earth. But this mass extinction helped pave the way for the next wave of animals to evolve. 240 to 230 million years ago, the first dinosaurs appeared. For the next 150 million years, they'd rule the land. If you were there, you'd have witnessed the gigantic sauropod Argentinosaurus, the largest land animal ever. Or you might have been chased by one of the Earth's greatest apex predators, the T-Rex. And you'd also witnessed Pangaea breaking up and forming the continents we know today. Okay, you may already know where this is headed. 66 million years ago, an asteroid slammed into our planet, right where Mexico sits now. And it coughed up so much debris into the atmosphere that it blocked out the sun. This led to devastating climate changes that caused the dinosaurs to die out. In the next wave of emerging animals, mammals became more common. Around 6 million years ago, the earliest known humans started walking this world. This species was called Sahelanthropus, though they still likely walked on all fours. 4 million years ago, early humans began to walk upright, and about 1 million years later, they developed the first known tools, which they used to break things. Some 800,000 years ago, things sparked. These early humans discovered how to control fire and could now cook food and provide themselves with heat. Their brains continued to evolve, now more rapidly than ever. These humans learned to interact with each other and the surrounding world in whole new ways. Then, between 40,000 to 15,000 years ago, all other human species besides Homo sapiens went extinct. 10,000 years ago, Earth saw its earliest farmers. These previously nomadic humans stopped wandering the planet and finally put down their roots. Jumping way forward to about 250 years ago, the Industrial Revolution took place. We went through major technological, socioeconomic, and cultural transformations. Rural-based farm societies became more industrialized urban ones. Our human population continued to grow. By 1804, we reached 1 billion. By 1927, we'd hit 2 billion. And since the 1960s, the global population has risen fast. took roughly 6 million years for humans to become what we are today, for example, giraffes with longer necks who can reach more food will be able to survive better than giraffes with short necks. And they'll be able to have more babies who will likely have longer necks just like their parents. And as time goes on, the short-necked giraffes will die out and the long-necked giraffes are the only ones left. That's why all our giraffes today have long necks. So how does this apply to humans exactly? Well, evolution in this sense is actually very hard to predict. In the world we live in, we don't need to worry about survival of the fittest. Technology has effectively cancelled a lot of that. You no longer need to worry about being the fastest or the strongest. This isn't 100,000 years ago when you had to fight for your food. But if we didn't have this luxury and we had to evolve the old-fashioned way, there's a few things that might happen. We just need to look at how modern humans have evolved in the past 12,000 years. We know we've been getting taller, most likely due to nutrition, and that our brains have been getting smaller. But don't worry, we haven't been getting dumber. Our brains are actually becoming more efficient. So, in a million years, we might be incredibly tall humans with tiny heads. Does that remind you of anything? At the end of the day, human evolution is incredibly difficult to predict. That's because evolution is primarily based on our environment. And who knows what might happen to the Earth in the next million years? We might need to evolve to survive fires, as the planet will become so incredibly hot. Ugh, I so hope I'm not around for that. If you traveled 250 million years into the past, you'd be witnessing the dawn of dinosaurs. One of the leading theories is that dinosaurs evolved from a species known as archosaurs. These were the dominant reptiles that appeared during the late Permian period. To some, they may even look like dinosaurs, and that's because they were ancestors to these incredible creatures. Over time, the archosaurs split up into two groups. One of these groups led to crocodiles, and the other led to dinosaurs, which continued evolving into thousands of different species. One of the main traits they eventually gained was their bipedal abilities. Early dinosaurs began to walk on two legs, freeing their front limbs for other uses like grabbing food and defending themselves. And that's just the start of their evolutionary journey. Let's travel back in time, 250 million years ago, and witness the history of dinosaurs in 10 minutes. Triassic period. As you enter this new era, you'll notice that the dinosaurs running around look pretty different from what you're used to seeing. One of the earliest dinosaurs that emerged from the archosaurs was the Eoraptor. This little guy was about the size of a dog, barely 1 meter tall and weighing in at a meager 10 kilograms. You know, we typically think of dinosaurs as these massive creatures, but it'd be a couple million more years before that started to happen. We'll check in to see how those dinos are growing in size as we travel through time. But for now, let's see what's happening to Earth. During the Triassic period, the supercontinent Pangaea starts to fragment, slowly altering global climates and ecosystems. The climate was generally hot and dry, and there were no polar ice caps, creating a stark contrast to what you're typically used to in modern-day Earth. The vegetation was also very different and was crucial for the survival and evolution of dinosaurs. The plants have different characteristics as well. Some are tough, some nutritious, and others potentially poisonous. Each one of them will influence the dietary and adaptive strategies of different dinosaur species. Speaking of which, what are some other dinosaurs doing during this time? Weighing in at about 23 kilograms and 1 meter tall, we have the Coelophysis. It was a little bit bigger than the Eoraptor, but that didn't stop it from being a fast and agile predator that likely preyed on smaller animals. Now, the Herrerasaurus was slightly taller at about 1.1 meters, but was a lot heavier at about 350 kilograms. Then we have the Plateosaurus. Now this guy is way bigger than me. It stood tall at about 3 meters and weighed up to 4,000 kilograms. This was one of the earliest examples of how big dinosaurs could grow. But wait, they get even bigger than this. Despite their impressive forms, dinosaurs weren't the dominant creatures during the Triassic. They had to share their environments with many other organisms, all vying for survival in the diverse ecosystems. This was the case until the Triassic period would experience a great extinction event. This was likely caused by massive volcanic activity, climate change, and potentially even some small asteroid impacts. This will have a significant effect on life on Earth and lead to the extinction of numerous species. But it wasn't all bad, especially for our dinosaurs. This moment set the stage to bring new opportunities to these species, leading to them dominating the Earth. Jurassic period. Now, instead of dinosaurs simply surviving, this is where they thrive. Over the millions of years, different species have been evolving, and dinosaurs are now the rulers of the Earth. They spread across continents, dominating the lush forests and arid deserts. Occupying these areas were some massive dinosaurs, ones that you're probably a lot more familiar with. We have the Stegosaurus, Brachiosaurus, and Allosaurus. These were some of the largest creatures ever to walk the Earth. But you'd quickly notice that it wasn't just these massive beasts that were roaming around. This era also saw the evolution of theropods. These were smaller dinosaurs that had more of a bird-like form. One of the most famous was the Archaeopteryx. It was kind of like a mix between a dinosaur and a bird, with feathers and wings, but also with bony teeth and a tail. The Archaeopteryx was a crucial link between birds and dinosaurs. If you wait about 100 million more years, they'll evolve into the birds we know today. Oh, wait, is that a spoiler? After 56 million years, the Jurassic period comes to an end. This was after yet another extinction event happened. Luckily, this one is more minor. However, due to climate change, volcanic activity, and sea levels changing, some species are going extinct. This once again changes the landscape as the dinosaurs enter their final era. Cretaceous period. Okay, we've now entered the Cretaceous period, and as we've been traveling through these millions of years, you may have noticed something's missing. Right, one of the dinosaurs' biggest stars hasn't appeared yet. Say hello to the Tyrannosaurus Rex. The T-Rex was a massive beast. It was 3.7 meters tall and 12 meters long. Not only that, but it was a whopping 9 tons. Equipped with a powerful jaw and incredibly sharp teeth, the T-Rex dominated the Cretaceous kingdom. It was one of the most dominant predators history has ever seen. This colossal beast wasn't just scavenging leftovers, it was an active hunter, stalking its prey with keen eyesight and a heightened sense of smell. Among its favorite meals were the sizable herbivores like the Edmontosaurus. But the T-Rex didn't stop there. It would take on formidable opponents like the Triceratops and even other smaller theropods if the opportunity arose. With its powerful jaws filled with 12-inch teeth and its strong hind limbs that allowed it to run at speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour, the T-Rex was a master of the hunt. But this period wasn't just filled with massive beasts like the T-Rex. look around and you'll also notice even more feathered dinosaurs in the Cretaceous period. One of them being the velociraptor. Now, you typically see them portrayed like this with no feathers, but evidence suggests that these creatures were quite feathered. Now, the feathers weren't necessarily used for flying, more for warmth and stability. And this one is the Microraptor. Now, unlike the Velociraptor, its feathers likely were used for flight, giving us crucial insight into the evolution of birds. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, Pangaea was breaking up and forming into the continents we know today. But because of this, some dinosaurs were forced to migrate and separate into different areas of the world. These dinosaurs had to adapt to their new environments, potentially changing the course of their evolution. But none of this matters when we consider what happens next. The cataclysmic event. Okay, as you've been hanging out with the dinosaurs for millions of years, an asteroid has been making its way toward Earth. Then suddenly, it hits, creating a massive crater 150 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep. Naturally, something this huge makes a devastating impact on the world, one that'll change it forever. The asteroid's collision is massive, but its impact is felt long after the initial crash. Due to the massive collision, the environment drastically changes. Significant drops in temperature start to occur, and debris from the crash begins to block out the sun. This impacts not only the dinosaurs' health, but also their food supply. This devastating event wipes out 75% of the Earth's species, many of which are the dinosaurs we've been observing this whole time. But don't worry, not all of the dinosaurs went extinct. The aviation-based dinosaurs we checked out earlier managed to survive the asteroid strike, eventually evolving into birds. Aftermath. Now that most of the dinosaurs are extinct, it's cleared the way for mammals to diversify and expand their impact on the world. With less competition, early mammals can now thrive and take over, which slowly, over time, allowed humans to evolve, building the world we know today. Humans have been evolving for the past 6 million years, but something's gone terribly wrong. And now, we're evolving backward. Once this process began, how long would it take for you to become an ape again? What does climate have to do with it? And why would society completely collapse? This is What If, and here's what would happen if humans evolved backward. Thanks to evolution, humanity dominates Earth. But how did that happen? Well, first, don't think of evolution as a straight and narrow path. Evolution happens through the process of natural selection. Over millions of years, organisms adapt to their environments by developing the traits needed to keep them alive. The life forms that don't adapt die. Evolution doesn't have an end goal for you. It's a never-ending process of survival. So, if you started de-evolving today, how soon would humanity perish? Your journey through devolution would eventually take you into the microscopic realm. It should take billions of years for you to get there, but for the sake of our scenario, we're going to speed this process up. Like, way up. Like, let's say you raced through the backward evolution at the speed of 1 million years in one day. Well, before you shrunk out of sight, your body would stretch to new heights. Well, that's good news for my short kings out there. In just 1 hour, you would grow to around 1.8 meters tall. Your jaw and teeth would also expand, and your brain size would increase massively. Yeah, that melon of yours is getting huge. You just devolved back into Homo erectus. humanity's long-extinct cousin. And these changes would have major consequences on your life. Another 2 minutes and you'd lose brain capacity. You'd forget how to hunt or farm. From now on, your diet would be limited. You'd eat whatever you could find in the wild, or you could make a trip to the grocery store while they still exist, but you certainly wouldn't be smart enough to understand how to pay. Clothes would be a thing of the past now. You'd be letting everything hang free. You'd forget everything. You wouldn't know how to bury the dead or how to create art. You'd be naked, hungry, kinda dumb, and a little uglier. The good news? Well, no one would tell you. After about 4 hours into this experiment, well, you'd lose the ability to talk. And as you grunted your way through life, society around you would start to crumble. Yeah, in the next 2.5 days, cities would become abandoned ruins of a time forgotten. Instead of living in these buildings, you'd prefer roughing it in huts. Now you would devolve into Homo habilis, eating leaves, plants, and whatever animal you could catch. With your diminished brain capacity, you wouldn't be able to use stone tools anymore, and a warm fire would be a rare luxury. After 6 days, you'd devolve back into a chimp. You'd be living off the spoils of the jungle, eating seeds, nuts, and insects. Over the next couple of months, wild primates would reign on Earth again. Okay, after 6 months of your devolution, the lines between species would blur. Now you would live among the monotremes, mammals that lay eggs like the platypus. Yeah, you'd be hatched into this new world. After 1 year, you'd be wallowing in freshwater habitats with the other tetrapods. And if that sounds refreshing, well, just wait. In 1 more year, you'd live it up as a starfish or a worm-like creature floating in the ocean without care. The once great species known as humans would return to a single-celled bacteria 10 years into this wild experiment. All of human history, your knowledge and experiences would be gone, and you would be reduced to a tiny speck. So, once you're back in this simple state, could you evolve back into a human again? Yeah, well, probably not. We humans evolved this way thanks to a lot of luck and specific circumstances. It all depends on the new conditions on our planet. You could develop blue skin like the Na'vi, or even become bioluminescent. Wow! Maybe you would just be a pile of slime. Who knows? Listen, devolution is a fun theory, but it's unlikely to happen like this. The situations that made your ancestors branch out from other species don't exist to make this process happen in exact reverse order. It's not like pressing rewind. Our universe was born billions of years ago, and since that time, it's given birth to millions of galaxies, our solar system, and who knows what else. Our universe has been evolving for 13.8 billion years. But how exactly did we get here? Well, strap in, because today we're going back in time to explore the history of the universe in 10 minutes.
In the beginning, there was nothing.
Then suddenly, the Big Bang happened and created our universe. Yeah, okay, maybe it's a little more complicated than that. How this cosmic event began is largely a mystery, but once it got started, it never stopped. Within milliseconds, particles like quarks and photons are formed. They're just some of the building blocks that make up the world you know today. A couple of minutes later, more elements were born. Protons and neutrons combined to create elements like helium and deuterium. And for the next 400 million years, the universe will continue to rapidly expand. After hundreds of millions of years of chaos and rapid expansion, things slow down a bit. This will begin the formation of the first structures of our universe. Think of these structures as the ingredients that make up our stars, galaxies, and even planets like Earth. Next, we see the formation of primordial gas clouds made up of helium and hydrogen, two of the elements that were created earlier. These gas clouds have been pulled together over millions of years through the force of gravity. Once they came together over millions of more years, they slowly got denser and denser. But let's speed this up. As our gas clouds are getting closer and denser, they're also getting hotter. Once the center of one of these clouds reaches 10 million degrees Kelvin, it'll suddenly ignite, creating a process known as nuclear fusion. The hydrogen atoms will combine to form helium, releasing an incredible amount of energy. Suddenly, the first star in our universe is born. But this isn't the only one. Within these cosmic clouds, billions of stars are now being created. And these aren't just shiny balls of light. They're going to play an integral part in shaping our universe. And not all these stars are identical. As they're born, they'll form into different shapes and sizes. Some will be massive blue giants, while others will be smaller red dwarfs. And it's not just their size that's different, stars have different lifespans too. Some live for tens of millions of years, while others live for trillions. And as we've been observing these stars, something fascinating has been happening. These stars don't like to chill in space by themselves. They want to group together. And it just so happens that when these stars, along with other particles like gas, dark matter, and dust, group together due to gravitational forces, they form galaxies. Yeah, galaxies like the Milky Way and Andromeda were formed in this way. But that won't be for a couple more billion years. Over hundreds of millions of years, the universe continued to expand. More galaxies formed, and they began to evolve in fascinating ways. In a common theme we've been seeing throughout our travels, the galaxies started to gravitate toward each other. As these galaxies begin to pull together, they create galaxy clusters. These are the largest gravitational structures we know of. At this time, we're also seeing some of the stars that formed near the beginning of the universe starting to die out. They're exploding into supernovas. But don't be sad that they're dying. These supernovas are a necessary sacrifice to provide the universe with essential elements that will later create planets and life. Speaking of essential elements, I should also mention dark matter. This is a mysterious substance that doesn't emit or absorb any light and plays a pivotal role in the tapestry of the universe. Even though we can't see dark matter, we know that it has a strong pull that has helped shape everything up until now. Dark matter is like a hidden framework that's helped form our galaxy clusters and other elements of the universe. Okay, now is when things get a little more familiar. After several smaller galaxies come together, the Milky Way begins to form. Our sister galaxy, the Andromeda galaxy, is also created during this time. And in other similar galaxies, solar systems are starting to be created. Enormous clouds of gas and dust collapse under their own gravity, bonding together and creating early planets and solar systems. And it only gets more interesting from here. Okay, we've been away for a couple billion years, and during that time, the universe has continued to expand. More solar systems and galaxies are formed, and way more stars have been created. Well, speaking of stars, arguably the most important star in all of space was born. Our sun. After our sun is born, extra gas and dust surround it. Over time, these particles clump together, eventually growing larger and larger. This process is called planetesimals, the beginning of the planets we know today in our solar system. Over time, these planetesimals grow larger and larger through countless collisions and gravitational attractions. One of these protoplanets that's emerging is Earth. Its growth is marked by a pivotal event. A Mars-sized body known as Theia crashes into our planetesimal, which creates what we now call Earth and our Moon. Similar collisions of celestial bodies create the other rocky planets we know today: Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Over in the cooler regions of space further away from the Sun, gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn are forming. But checking back in on our rocky planets, they look significantly different than they do in the present day. They're a lot smoother than I remember. Well, just wait a couple more million years for what's known as the Late Heavy Bombardment to occur. This cosmic event saw massive asteroids hit these rocky planets. It played a huge role in how they're shaped today. Okay, after billions and billions of years, we finally start to see life appear in our universe. But don't get too excited. These are simple, single-celled organisms known as prokaryotes. They lack many of the essential features for life today, but are still an important part of our evolution. You currently have trillions of them living on your body. Not long after this, oxygen begins to appear on Earth, and so do multi-celled organisms. Earth's climate is beginning to take shape, and we see the introduction of the ozone layer, which protects life from harmful radiation from space. Okay, another couple billion years have passed, and a lot has happened. The organisms that were microscopic have evolved to become creatures with vertebrae. This is a significant milestone and a precursor to all other vertebrate life on Earth, including you. And even more change happens during this time. Plants are evolving and continents are moving. This is the age of reptiles and Pangea, but it also had its shortcomings. A mass extinction event occurs, wiping out a vast majority of the species that have been so patiently evolving. This sets the stage for dinosaurs and mammals to emerge. And as this era comes to a close, Pangea begins to fragment, laying the groundwork for our modern continents. And now we're here.
About 50,000 years ago, we shared this planet with different hominids called the Neanderthals. Their species wasn't human, but they weren't far from it either. No longer walking among us, these early cousins of humans died out long ago, but not before they had a chance to, get intimate with some of our ancestors. If you were to mate with a Neanderthal today, what would your children look like? Would your relationship stay monogamous? And how much money would you spend on a date? This is What If, and here's what would happen if you mated with a Neanderthal. With their protruding brows and large molars, a Neanderthal may not be the most attractive partner available, but considering that 20% of Neanderthal DNA is found in humans across the globe, they might have had a little something going on. After all, our bodies are entirely compatible, and these primitive features might trigger something primal in you. And while you might have a wild night out, would you be able to speak the same language? Let's clear a few important things up. Humans did not evolve from Neanderthals. Our species and theirs came from a common ancestor over 500,000 years ago. Then, like two branches on the same tree, we both went our separate ways. Neanderthals roamed Eurasia while humans were starting to migrate out of Africa. But due to inbreeding and smaller population size, the Neanderthals slowly faded out of existence. And if they were still around today, our gene pool might look wildly different. But before you start painting the nursery, let's start talking about your matches. Again, you may not find Neanderthals conventionally attractive, but they weren't the lumbering oafs from our imaginations. Our primitive cousins were adept at hunting and killed large animals at close range. They made many tools and even created jewelry. These strong and fierce hominids would be able to protect you, bring home dinner, and even make you an anniversary gift. But you'd want to dine in more often, especially when you consider that Neanderthals would eat 700 calories more than humans per day. They might be primitive, but they wouldn't be a cheap date. Also, considering that Neanderthals often ate the contents inside their prey's stomach, their table manners might be a little bit messy. But even then, there might be an attraction you couldn't deny. So, what would attract you to a Neanderthal? Most of our human desires are ruled by the specific mate recognition system. This means you're attracted to individuals you feel comfortable with, so anyone who triggers the right anatomical, behavioral, or chemical cues in you could cause an intense attraction. But hey, you like whoever you like. Unfortunately for you though, a relationship with a Neanderthal wouldn't be exclusive. Neanderthals lived in small communities and inbreeding was a common practice. So your potential in-laws would all be fierce competition for your partner's affection. Our skin and hair still contain genes from Neanderthals' surviving genomes. While your children would have a full head of hair, they could suffer from blood clots and be more at risk for catching communicable diseases like COVID-19. And depending on your partner, your hybrid offspring might have trouble reproducing. Mating between human females and male Neanderthals would be less likely to produce fertile children. Neanderthals were known for their broad noses and protruding brows. Based on fossils found from these human-Neanderthal pairings, your kids might not inherit those features, but they could have massive molars, a large bone behind their ear, or frontal face flattening. Flat head syndrome isn't lethal for infants, but it can be costly to correct, involving physical therapy or expensive corrective helmets. Humans mating with Neanderthals didn't keep their species going, but their legacy lives on in our DNA.
Wait a minute, Neanderthals are extinct? Before you laugh, check yourself. Neanderthal DNA is 99.7% identical to our own. And researchers claim that some humans might be carrying as much as 2% of the Neanderthal genome. Making things even weirder is that scientists recently recovered a nearly complete DNA sequence from a 50,000-year-old Neanderthal skeleton. So, in theory, Neanderthals could make a comeback. But how would they adapt? And how long would they survive? This is What If? And here's what would happen if Neanderthals hadn't gone extinct. Despite their physical differences, like being shorter and having longer skulls, we might have more in common with Neanderthals than we'd like to admit. First of all, their brains were bigger, which doesn't make them smarter than us, but they could communicate with one another. They settled in family communities and took care of the sick and the elderly. They also crafted sophisticated tools which would have been used for anything from hunting to possibly shipbuilding. They even cooked their vegetables and ate them, which is more than you can say. So, if Neanderthals are simply the beta version of what humans became, could they still live among us?
Neanderthals, in fact, did live among us. For about 5,000 years, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals coexisted in Europe, and likely interbred. This would explain why most Eurasians probably have at least 1% of the Neanderthal DNA in their genome, while anyone of African descent doesn't have any Neanderthal DNA since their ancestors didn't migrate through Eurasia. But with the Homo sapien population significantly outnumbering the Neanderthal population, it's likely that modern humans simply absorbed the Neanderthal species. Another theory is that we outcompeted them for resources during the last ice age, resulting in their extinction. But whichever theory is right, what if the concluding fact was wrong? What if Neanderthals were not extinct? If Neanderthals somehow evolved as a separate but very similar species to humans, how would they fare? Despite their communication and craftsmanship abilities, the laws of natural selection prove that Homo sapiens are superior, which means the survival options for Neanderthals wouldn't be that great. Barring the likelihood of early modern humans breeding them out of existence, Neanderthals probably would have become something like second-class citizens. Would we enslave them? Keep them in zoos? Or force them to fight? It's hard to say. Would the limits of their intelligence prevent them from fully integrating into modern society, or would they learn and evolve, just like Homo sapiens? Maybe they'd want nothing to do with us. Realizing how our differences outweigh our similarities, could we expect Neanderthals to establish their own communities and continue to exist independently of the developing world? It's hard to predict exactly how a species that went extinct about 40,000 years ago would behave today. But then again, maybe we just have to look around us. Neanderthals may be extinct, but we did evolve alongside them, and some of us inherited more than others. So think twice before you call someone a Neanderthal. It can be quite offensive.
1,000 years into the future, humans might look like this. This is Mindy, a model that shows what we humans might look like in the year 3000. Equipped with a hunched-over back, claws, and a smaller brain, Mindy has adapted this way primarily due to technology and cell phones. But this is just a start of a potential evolutionary journey of the human body. Let's travel 1 million years into the future to see the even crazier ways our bodies will evolve. Super strength, giant eyes, and edited genes are all things you might see later in this episode. But why are we getting all these traits anyway? Well, more on that in a second, but for now, let's check in and see what the next phase of evolution is for humans. 5,000 years into the future. Okay, we're now several thousand years into the future, and in many ways, humans would look relatively similar to how we do now. Yeah, if we look 5,000 years into the past from where we are today, well, humans look basically the same. The main differences are that, well, we're now healthier, taller, and stronger. This is primarily due to how our diet, healthcare, and lifestyle have changed throughout the centuries. This is speculation, but you can assume that a lot will have happened 5,000 years into the future. Changes that include space travel and massive advancements in technology and AI. And how we look all depends on where humans decide to live in the future. If humanity becomes an interstellar civilization, well, we might look like this. And if we stay on Earth and go all in on AI, well, humans might look more like this. So we'll explore a couple of options as we move through the years. The generations of humans who decide to go to Mars will notice the most significant changes. Mars's lower gravity would lead to less bone density and muscle mass. But the change in gravity might also lead to increased height and longer limbs. And there'll be a lot more changes coming up, but for now, let's take another jump into the future and check on some other options for human evolution. 25,000 years into the future. It's safe to say that technology will play a heavy role in how humans evolve. Traveling 25,000 years into the future, well, you might decide to have a designer baby. Instead of creating life naturally and leaving so many things to chance, you would select various traits for who you want your baby to be. You could choose physical characteristics like hair and eye color, and much more essential features like the ability to avoid certain diseases and allergies. In a way, this is already happening today, but in the future, it'll be more advanced and accessible. It's also likely that humans will begin to fuse with technology, becoming cyborg-like beings. Think neural links, robot limbs, and sensory enhancements. Imagine having a chip in your brain that's equipped with an AI that provides you with any answer you need. Humans will have all these cybernetic enhancements that will make them smarter, stronger, and able to live longer. 100,000 years into the future. One of the ways which we can see how much humans have evolved is by looking at our faces and heads. As you see here, in 100,000 years, our eyes and heads will be significantly larger. This will be due to multiple reasons, one of them being that we'll be living in different environments, like space. Our larger eyes will allow us to see better in low-light environments. They'll also help protect our eyes from the cosmic rays found in space. On Mars, along with bones becoming less dense and limbs continuing to get longer, residents there will need to develop some new survival traits to last this long. As humanity has developed on Mars over the generations, well, they've been experiencing tons of radiation in their environment. That's thanks to the lack of an atmosphere on the red planet. Over time, humanity there has slowly adapted to this new way of life, but the radiation levels are so harsh that they likely haven't adapted enough to live comfortably. One of the problems with evolution is that it's incredibly slow. Seeing significant change in our bodies can take millions of years. So, to fix that, we'll need to make some changes ourselves. You'll see what I mean as we continue on to our 1 million year mark. 250,000 years into the future. Yeah, humanity was tired of waiting and waiting for changes in evolution to happen, so they've decided to do it themselves. We've been altering our bodies with technology for hundreds of thousands of years at this point, but now we're gonna take it to another level. Yeah, instead of adding some sort of enhancement to our bodies, well, we'll now alter our DNA with advanced genetic manipulation. Scientists are already experimenting with this technology, but 250,000 years from now, well, you can bet the science will be advanced beyond belief. Scientists will be able to alter, edit, and even add different genetic mutations, both before people are born and after. In the case of our colony on Mars, well, people on that planet could alter their genes so that the radiation isn't as harmful to their bodies. And that's just the start. Eventually, we'll alter our genes to produce all sorts of insane attributes. You could be brilliant, have super strength, or be immune to every disease. As humanity unlocks this new era of human evolution, things are about to get even better. By the way, are you wondering where we've been getting all these crazy video ideas lately? Well, they come from our Patreon. We've got an exclusive Discord where members get front-of-the-line access to talk about the what-if ideas they want made. Sign up and maybe we'll create your next idea. 500,000 years into the future. Okay, it's been another 250,000 years. Humanity has been playing around with this gene editing thing, and it's gotten pretty ridiculous. Scientists have managed to combine parts of lizard DNA with our human DNA. This has allowed us to regrow our limbs and grow new organs if we need them. Also, along with the help of technology and gene editing, humans are more intelligent than ever. We can now naturally have any appearance we want. This might sound kind of scary, but gene editing like this will likely be essential for us to survive in new environments, like space and our evolving Earth. 1 million years into the future. So remember the humans back on Earth? The ones who were adding tons of cybernetic enhancements to their bodies? Yeah, they've continued to do that, along with tons of gene editing. And the people in space have been doing the same thing. But as we've been progressing through these 1 million years, well, the environments on Earth and Mars have been very different. And because of these different environments, the humans living on these planets would have different needs and desires for the types of bodies they want. Remember, evolution is all about lifestyle and environment. That's why Mindy, at the start, looked the way she did. It's possible that the humans living on these two planets would be so different that they'd essentially be two completely separate species. Sort of like 50,000 years ago when there were humans on Earth at the same time as Neanderthals. But regardless of how they're different, it's likely that both types of future humans will be the most advanced species ever seen. We'll live longer, maybe forever, be smarter than ever, and be ready to take on whatever challenges the future holds. All good things must come to an end. Sadly, Homo sapiens' time on Earth is no exception. And someone would surely take our place as the dominant species. But who? Or rather, what? How could genetic engineering spell out the end for our species? What would distinguish the next Homo species from us? And could the world's next dominant species not be human at all? This is What If, and here's what would happen if Homo sapiens went extinct. Some of the earliest species of humans date back at least 7 million years. Back then, different humanoid species belonging to the hominidae family walked amongst each other. They evolved, interbred, and, way more often than not, died out. Our species, Homo sapiens, arrived on the scene about 6 million years ago. But it wasn't until some point in the last 15,000 to 40,000 years that we emerged as the only living species of humans. And not long after that, we had settled on every continent except for Antarctica. Our social innovation and tool creation are some of the factors you could thank for this. These skills allowed us to outcompete other species like Neanderthals. And this innovative nature could be what leads to our very own demise, when we create a new superhuman species that could outlive us all. According to the author Don Simborg, our successors, or Homo nouveau, would look more or less just like you. The big difference? These humanoids would be more like a highly engineered version. Homo nouveau would be created through the selective editing of our genes. Their genes could be manipulated so that they grow taller, age slower, or no longer contract certain diseases. And should these new humans not interbreed with us, they could be on their own distinct evolutionary path. Thanks to natural selection, they could start looking and acting differently from us Homo sapiens. Now, while this could sound like something out of a sci-fi film, it could be closer than you think. It took modern humans about 200,000 years to evolve from our more archaic predecessors, but Homo nouveau could come into existence in a matter of decades. This could be largely thanks to CRISPR. And no, that's not the hottest new kitchen appliance. It's an acronym for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. In other words, genetic editing. Using this method, you could add, remove, or alter particular locations in an organism's DNA. You could use it to prevent and treat diseases by making edits to somatic cells in your body. These changes you make to your own genome couldn't be passed on to your children, but should you start tinkering with the genetic sequences of your eggs or sperm cells, you could be laying out the red carpet for our successor species. Next-gen CRISPR-created humans could have genetically modified heights and muscle masses to go along with their customized skin, hair, and eye colors. And over time, there could be an intersection of both natural and unnatural selection. Desirable traits could emerge as dominant ones. These new humans could digest food differently, be less prone to disease, and be better adapted to the effects of climate change. They could withstand more extreme temperatures, be less reliant on nutrients and water, or be more resilient to radiation. This would be a particularly huge advantage should interplanetary space travel be common in the future. But things wouldn't necessarily be all peaches and sunshine for this future species. Dangers and unexpected challenges could present themselves when we play such a godlike role in our own evolutionary path. Editing just one gene in a single individual with the hope of achieving a specific result could have far-reaching unintended consequences. And these consequences could then be inherited by this person's children and their children's children. Now, while it may sound fun to manipulate our physiological characteristics, it wouldn't be so simple to engineer humans to be more intelligent. There are thousands of genes linked to your IQ, and they rely on many complex interactions. Messing around with these genes could have disastrous outcomes. Imagine more and more humans suffering from behavioral conditions like Tourette's syndrome or attention deficit disorder. Whether on purpose or accidental, these could be encoded by only a few genes. And since these are hereditary, they could be passed on. But then again, as gene editing advances, you could also see these disorders eliminated entirely. These Homo nouveau could also combine their genetically modified traits with cyborg technologies. They could retrieve information at lightning speed, enhance their vision with infrared to see at night, or become super soldiers by hooking themselves up directly to machines like fighter jets. Competing with Homo nouveau for survival would be an increasingly difficult situation for us mere humans. And eventually, it could be the end of us. Of course, there's always the chance that a non-human entity could surpass us before they do, like artificial superintelligence. But that's a story for another What If. In the past few billion years, Earth has been pummeled by asteroids, crashed into other planets, and frozen over several times. Not to mention being ruled by